Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and I talk a lot about Salesforce. Today we're going to be going over the Salesforce Certified Sales Rep mini course to help you prepare for the exam. This is a fairly new exam released by Salesforce, so I'm super excited to have this mini course going out to you guys. I do want to mention that we just released our full-length course, so if you like this and my teaching style, how I show the different modules here and the different lessons, it's very similar to how it is actually covered in our course. So I'll leave a link down to that down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this mini course. All right, so first off, I want to start by talking about the exam, kind of going over the exam guide. So about this credential, this is going to cover a lot of sales rep topics. This exam for me was very term heavy focused, and it wasn't actually too focused on Salesforce much, if at all. There were maybe one or two questions that mentioned the Salesforce software or the different bits and pieces of Salesforce software. So what that kind of looked like was it was more contextual of it mentioned this piece of software, but it wasn't really an aspect of the actual question and answer portion of this is what Salesforce software can do to help you be a better sales rep. It really was more term focused, context focused, and theory focused than most of the other Salesforce certifications are. Very similar to business analyst. They do recommend that you have 6 months to 3 years of sales rep experience. Personally, I did not have that. I had some experience working with sales teams, so I was familiar with some of the lingo, but that was about it. I think this exam is very doable if you don't have any sales experience, but you work hard to learn the terminology and the context behind the terminology, and then it should be an easy pass. Okay, and then about the exam, 60 to 65 multiple choice questions. Those 5 non-scored are going to be baked within. You have 105 minutes to complete it, which is about an hour and 45 minutes, passing score of 70%. And then in the United States, it is $200 plus taxes. Retake is $100 plus taxes. You can do this on site or at a testing center. Personally, there aren't really many testing centers near me, so I do it online at home. No hard copy reference materials or online reference materials, and no prerequisites. One thing that I noticed about the exam that was super awesome was that they had a note section. So pretend like the about section here is the question and answer. And then they had like a line here and then a little box for you to be able to type in notes. Personally, that's super helpful to me because I like to remember things as I go forward on the exam that I think might be covered later on. So I will write a few notes. That could maybe help jog my memory from something that I was studied. Super helpful. I don't know if it's on all Salesforce exams or just this one, but I really found that helpful. There is a trail mix that you can go over. But let's go ahead and jump into the exam outline. It's going to be planning at 21%. So a lot of planning how to approach different accounts or different clients and customers, how to plan a territory, how to plan a sales quota, and how to plan how you're going to reach out to people. That is going to be planning at 21%. Then customer engagement at 15%, which is how are you going to build credibility with the customer? How are you going to try and use their problems that they have within their business to meet their needs with your solution, and then nurture relationships. There is a good amount of crossover on this exam between some of the sections. So I'd say between planning, customer engagement, and deal management, there's a good amount of crossover. Pipeline management and forecasting is a lot of crossover. And then customer success is kind of on its own island, but we'll talk about it. But again, how do you build credibility with the customer? How do you work with the customer to best become a trusted person, a trusted relationship? And how do you use that relationship to sell appropriately? That's going to be customer engagement at 15%, then deal management at 37%. So this one's going to be more structured of a section. So it's going to go through the 7 stages of the sales process, like lead generation, prospecting, qualification, proposal, all those kinds of things, and what you're going to do in those individual stages when it's time to move on from that stage, maybe when it's time to go back from that stage. How do you deal with objections, and which stage do you deal with objections? How do you get a final commitment and close the formal contract? That's all going to be in deal management. Again, you're taking pieces from planning and customer engagement, and then you're also putting that in deal management. A lot of crossover between those 3. All right, then it's going to be pipeline management, all about generating a new pipeline, analyzing your pipeline health, and making sure that your pipeline is progressing appropriately for your customer base, for your products, whatever it is. Then it's going to be forecasting at 6%, which is going to be forecast accuracy, So keeping your data clean, data integrity, and how to forecast appropriately. A lot of crossover between forecast and pipeline. Then it's going to be customer success. So customer success is everything that happens after post-sales. So once your customer has signed, how are you going to deliver your product? How are you going to deliver your solution to the customer and make sure they're onboarded correctly? Now, there's a bunch of different pieces to that. Essentially, it is just whatever happens after they have signed the contract. And that is customer success at 9%. Finally, before we move on to some of the more individual pieces of this, just make sure that you don't share out any questions or answers from the exam. It violates the credential program and you can lose your certifications. And then they don't have any maintenance modules right now. So just be sure to check back in and see in a couple of months or weeks after you get your credential to see if there are any updates that you will need to do to keep your certification. Super sad when people lose certifications because they don't keep it up to date. All right, so now I do want to jump into some of the individual sections. I've got, I think, 5 or 6 different sections that I want to cover in this mini course that are very similar to how I cover this in the full-length course. Again, this exam was not at all like in-depth in the weeds of Salesforce and what happens when you do certain things within Salesforce. So a lot of this was learning different theories, different practices, different best practices, and the terminology. So that's how we're going to go about this mini course. From the planning section, I wanted to talk about sales quota planning. Sales quotas are selling targets for individuals to meet within a certain time period generally. And then this also can roll up. So what I've seen it is you have a sales quota for the individual basis, and then for the team, and then maybe the whole department, you have a sales quota that you are trying to reach over a month or a quarter or a year or half a year, however your company really wants to go about selling. And of course, this is going to differentiate between what your product is. If you are selling a car versus selling an analytics product, your sales quota is going to look vastly different. Whatever time period you're using is going to be vastly different. So let's talk about some general factors that go into sales quotas. When you are planning for your sales quota, you'll want to look at your previous quotas met or the previous quotas that you've gotten close to, or maybe ones that have been too high. This can be an indicator of, or I guess recent previous success can be an indicator of future success. Of course, you're wanting to work to bring in new deals, but typically it should be a fairly linear process of, well, if we sold $50,000 last quarter, let's go ahead and try maybe $60,000 this quarter. So then we can always be reaching for something a little bit better, always be improving. Also, another factor is the number of sales reps that you have. If you have 5 sales reps versus 30 sales reps on a team, then your sales quota is going to look vastly different between those two team sizes. Another one is going to be the number of open leads. So if you've got 20 open leads that look like they might convert versus 5, that sales quota is going to look a lot different because you can expect a certain level of closure from those leads. Then also seasonality of the company's product. Let's say you have a back to school product, and so you're going to get a lot of sales in July, August, September, rather than the rest of the year. And so that quarter or that section of time is going to be a lot more profitable. So you'd want to raise your sales quota during that product period for the sales reps. Then I guess one thing that is also kind of adjacent to this is marketing channels. As a sales rep, you shouldn't focus too much on the leads that are coming in and solely relying on leads that are coming in through your marketing channels. But let's say if you went from 1 marketing channel to 5 marketing channels, you might be able to reasonably expect more leads to come in. And so maybe you want to slightly raise your sales quota for that purpose. Let's go over some planning activities for sales quotas. You can have quarter recap meetings. These are super helpful to understand how the previous quarter went with your sales quota. How successful were you on your sales quota? How close did you come, or were you able to exceed your sales quota in that quarter? And what can you do to improve? This can also help you understand maybe what you're going to be doing going forward for the next quarter. And then you've got data deep dives. So this is going deep into your reports and your opportunities and your leads to understand where maybe the best leads come from. And so you want to raise your sales quota because you are diving deeper into a lead source that has been really rich for you guys in the past. And then you can have sales teams brainstorming activities. This can help you sell better. This can help you understand different approaches. Maybe you guys want to try as a sales team to approach things differently in the following quarter. So it might be a reason to raise or lower your sales quota. All right, now that we've gone over sales quotas, we're going to jump into the next section, which is going to be collaborate with the customer. So this is a part of a theory of selling from Dale Carnegie. That's the 5 C's of selling, and I believe collaborate is step 2 of that process. Let's go ahead and jump into what collaborating with the customer means. So collaborating is asking a lot of questions to go forward in the sales process. So you're going to be asking a lot of the customer about their business, what their pain points are, and really trying to paint a very clear picture of their current state within their selling process. And there's going to be 2 types of questions that are going to be focused on the exam that you're going to want to understand, know what types of questions and their labels. So these are going to be clarifying and conforming questions. So let's first start off with clarifying questions. These are going to be questions to help you understand more and help the customer elaborate. So examples are going to be, tell me more about blank. What do you mean when you say blank? How does this affect your day-to-day? Really open-ended questions to help you paint a broader picture of their current state to maybe be able then to later use your product to help them. So let's pretend that we have an analytics company, and one of our main metrics that we pull from our customer or for our customer is going to be lead source. So we help them understand what the most effective lead source is for their business currently, so then they can maybe invest more into that lead source. If we wanted to learn more about their current lead sourcing process, we can say, tell me more about your lead generation process. Where do you find the most successful leads? What do you mean when you say it's really hard to find qualified leads? How does this affect your sales team? So these are going to be different clarifying questions that help you clarify what the customer means. All right, and then there's going to be confirming questions, which are going to validate your understanding. These can help you build a relationship better with the customer because they really feel like you're listening to them. It also helps you just, double check that you know what they are saying, and it frames their challenges in other words. Examples of this is, as I understand it, you blank. It sounds like to me blank. What I'm hearing you say is blank. I guess going back to this analytics example is that we could say, as I understand it, you aren't bringing many leads in from this lead source, or as I understand it, you're having a really hard time identifying the best lead source. Those are going to be confirming questions. And that is collaborate. All right, so now let's go ahead and jump into prospecting. This is going to be how you get new leads. The process of collecting leads. And this is more in the deal management section of the exam when you're going through the different processes and the different stages of selling. This is going to be one of the first stages of selling, is that you're going to be collecting leads. This is the start of the sales pipeline, and it really breathes life into the business and sales process. So when you are collecting leads, these are not people who have said, yes, I want to purchase on your product, or I want to be onboarded with your project. These are going to be people who may be interested, who maybe have shown some signs of wanting to purchase your product or some interest. Definitely go about this strategically and really use the data. Like we talked about in the previous section, when you are prospecting, data can be super useful. So if one lead source is going to yield a lot of new leads versus another lead source, then it would be worth putting more time, attention, effort, money maybe into one lead source that has been super duper helpful for us in the past. So let's talk a little bit about different prospecting techniques. One that's going to be fairly successful is going to be referrals. So current customers saying to their friends, to their colleagues, whomever, hey, we really liked this one company, you should go check them out. Typically, referrals have some of the best conversion rates, and so you might want to spend some time and attention into referrals. Then you've got cold calling, which is going to be when you are reaching out to random people over the phone and calling them about your business. This one, people don't usually like to be called, but it can be successful. And then you've got personal/social outreach. So what this means, it can mean a few different things. So when I think about personal social outreach, it's going to be like over LinkedIn, if it's a professional product, or maybe through different social media channels or through events, really reaching out to the customer on a one-on-one basis. There's a company in my area who has a carnival or an event every year for their customers to bring their families to. And it's a big fun Saturday event where you can do like face painting and there's bouncy houses and they've got food trucks and it's super fun. And it helps keep that company in the forefront of everyone's minds, so then they're able to be successful. This is a form of personal social outreach where you can mingle and meet people from different companies to kind of get your name out there and eventually hopefully get some leads from that. And then let's talk about a little bit about marketing here. While prospecting can include marketing channels, the exam mostly focuses on what you can do as a sales rep. So I wouldn't be too heavily focused on email marketing or social media marketing when you're thinking about your question answers, but these can be a way to prospect. Through email marketing, you can get leads, and social media marketing, you can get leads, of course, depending on your product and your company and your customer type. Then when you move on to the next stage, which is lead qualification. So when you go from prospecting stage to lead qualification stage, typically this is when you have a lead that will talk to you. So then you can start the qualification process, which is going to be, are they reasonably interested in our product? And of course, different companies are going to have different ideas of what moving from prospecting to qualification is going to look like, but generally it's going to be when you can start talking to that lead. All right, and the next kind of lecture that I want to cover, or the next section I want to cover, covers both the pipeline and the forecasting aspect of this exam. And I want to touch on forecasting versus pipeline and really what the differences are. That was super important on the exam to know the differences between the two because they are very similar. They do very similar things, but there's just one small difference that makes a huge difference. So forecasting is going to be what deals are in the works over a certain time period, like a quarter or a year. Close dates are super important for this, and that's the main thing that you're going to use when you're calculating the forecast. So let's say that in general, we've got 12 deals in the pipeline, but the close dates for only 6 of them are going to be in this quarter. So the forecast for this quarter is going to be 6 deals. Again, that time period is super duper useful. And that's why close dates are super useful, and keeping your data clean and up to date is super useful. Pipeline is going to be all the deals that are in the works, regardless of what the close date is. So if we've got 12 deals in the works, we've got 6 that are going to close in the current quarter, it would just be all 12 is going to be the pipeline. 6 in the current quarter is going to be the current quarter's forecast. Forecasting and pipeline, I do want to mention, are super important to the business as a whole because that we know how much income or revenue we are going to reasonably bring in based upon a forecast or based upon the pipeline. And you can make business decisions based upon what's reasonably going to close within your forecast or in your pipeline. So let's say your company wanted to purchase Salesforce as a software to use, but they needed to hit a certain number in sales to be able to budget appropriately for Salesforce and purchasing Salesforce for their company. Forecasting is super important because it can tell us if we have enough deals in the current quarter to be able to then afford it in the next quarter, as well as pipeline. If there are enough deals near the end of the pipeline, like in the proposal stage or in the negotiation stages, then we could possibly reasonably expect to be able to afford that software. It's super important. Keep your data clean, keep your data up to date, because if your data is not up to date, then it can make those decisions very difficult. You might make a difficult decision, a wrong decision for your company based upon that data. All right, and now the final section that I want to cover, which kind of goes over the success section of the exam, is the post-sales customer journey. So what does this include? Pretty much everything after the sale. So once you have signed a contract, it'll look different based upon your companies, but typically once you have signed that deal, then you'll move on to customer success or customer service. Now, this is going to look different for each company depending on the product and the customer type. But basically, it breaks down into a few things. 1, the customer gets the product or service that they expected. 2, the customer is happy and any additional sales are ready to be taken. Let's talk about the differences between different industries, because I didn't notice that this was a somewhat large portion on the exam where it wasn't super consistent between product-based business, customer success, or service-based business, customer success. Now that is a mouthful, but let's go ahead and break it down. So product-based businesses. what is this going to include when you're going over post-sales? So this is going to be, depending of course on the product, is going to be product delivery, making sure that the product is functioning and any customer service requests are taken care of, and then additional post-product purchases. So if you think about product-based things, you could think of Amazon, where it's going to be, maybe you ordered 5 different items. It's going to be pulled from each warehouse, and then shipping is going to be taken care of. If one of your products is broken when it arrives, taking care of that request. Maybe it's a return or a refund. But yeah, or maybe if it could look different if you have like a manufacturing business where you are making air conditioning units, that product-based business is going to look different. So you're going to be sourcing parts, and then you're going to be making the air conditioning unit and then going for delivery and maybe installation as well. And then you've got service-based businesses. So think of really consulting, and that's mainly what the service-based business was that they focused on, was a different types of consulting. So for this, you're going to make sure that your SOWs or your statements of work are set. So then your expectations can be reasonably managed of what's going to be covered in your contract versus what's not going to be covered. Then you're going to make sure that you have consultants that are ready to go and deliver on the product, have a timeline for delivery. And then once the service or the project or product has been delivered on, then go into managed services, which is going to be maybe any further additional customer service requests that you have, or making sure that the software is up to date. But with that being said, that is the mini course over sales rep exam. Again, this exam is more theory-based. It's more, I guess, stage-based. What do you do in the certain aspects of sales stages, and how do you sell, and then how do you deliver on that selling contract? It really was not at all deep into the weeds of Salesforce, how the admin exam and other, I guess, feature-based exams are from Salesforce. Be sure to take your time. And one thing I do want to mention is that this exam is a choose 1 out of 3, whereas a lot of the other Salesforce exams are choose 1 out of 4 or 2 out of 5. So that was super helpful for using the process of elimination to be able to answer the questions appropriately and correctly. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you found this series, this mini course, helpful. If you did, be sure to give it a like, subscribe. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter at EmilyCallMBA. You can check out the courses down below in the description. We are super excited to bring out this sales rep course because there aren't very many great resources on it quite yet because it's so new. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.